Okay, this is day 4, section 2. We talked about nutrition, the importance of nutrition. So now we're going to talk about problems within nutrition. Anorexia nervosa is a starvation to maintain low weight. It is most often an issue of control. It's tied to psychological things, not just somebody choosing to starve themselves. Anorexia nervosa is a disease. Bulimia is the desire to binge and purge after eating. Eating a lot of food and then vomiting the food up. This has a higher incidence among females than males, the bulimia does. Both disorders seem to be to cross socioeconomic lines. It doesn't seem to matter where you fall in the pay scales. It just seems to hit people that way. It is more common in cultures that have a lot of social influence versus cultures that don't. Threats to wellness and health in childhood. Majority of U.S. preschoolers are fairly healthy. They may have 7 to 10 colds or other minor respiratory issues before 3 to 5, and within 3 to 5. The book says that it's important for children to have minor illnesses because it helps them have coping skills, and it also helps them develop empathy for others who are sick. This is interesting to me too. Both of my children are ADHD. Both have been on medications for different reasons. This is the increasing number of children being treated with drugs for emotional disorders such as depression, antidepressants, and stimulants. So we have neurolepticals, those are seizure meds. Clonidine is a behavior med. Antidepressants, Ritalin, stimulants. These two are ADHD. That is a huge jump, huge. So the research doesn't know why. Is it an increase in the ability to recognize children with ADHD? Is it the lack of training in the schools to deal with ADHD? No one's really sure, but that is a humongous jump for medications. Injuries during childhood. Children are at a higher risk to have accidents. Again, they're learning fine motor skills and gross motor skills. Their brains are, their bodies are growing awkwardly. They're at a higher level of physical activity. They're also curious. And again, if that frontal lobe isn't developed yet, which it's not jumping off of buildings probably doesn't occur to them. They have a lack of judgment and a lack of self-control. There are differences across gender, culture, and socioeconomic status. Lead poisoning. 14 million children are at risk for lead poisoning, according to the Center for Disease Control. Lead poisoning is an incredible hazard to children under 6 years old. Lead poisoning can create brain damage. It can kill children. And the children most at risk for this are those who live in old housing that's not well taken care of, housing that hasn't, poverty. We looked at the numbers of children in poverty, and those are the children who are at risk to get lead poisoning. Sudden infant death syndrome, or SIDS, is a disorder in which a healthy infant dies in their sleep. It occurs in 1 in 2,500 infants in the United States each year. No one knows why it happens. It's still unknown why it happens. If it's noticed by a parent, they do have machines that they hook up to the infant to wake up the parent if the infant doesn't breathe. They have ways to help the infant, but it has to be caught, and that's the tricky part. The rate of SIDS has declined with education. So, excuse me, they're saying, people are more aware that this can be a thing. They're more aware that your child has to sleep in a specific position and there shouldn't be things in the bed. And because of this new education and this new awareness, the numbers have started to decline. Threats to wellness and health, adolescent drug use. 1 in 15 high school seniors smokes marijuana on a daily or near daily basis. I was amazed at this number until I started talking to people. Apparently, it's a thing. It's like a huge thing. I know you high schoolers are laughing at me, but I didn't know. It can be used at fairly, usage has remained at a fairly high level over the last decade. Attitudes about marijuana use has become more favorable. There's so much now going on about marijuana and the benefits of marijuana and how it can help with so many health issues. I absolutely agree with that. I agree marijuana has a place in our world. I do not, however, agree with using it right now as a recreational thing. I'm just going to put that out there. For one main reason, because it has changed over the years. The marijuana that is grown now is so powerful and so addictive in nature, not maybe physically, but emotionally. It is incredibly addictive. It's not good for you right now. The way that it's grown now is terrible. My hope is that we can see this as a plant that God created and that we can find its medical uses and allow those to be used. That's my hope. Also, just so you know, my son is a big, he wants marijuana to be legalized. I've had every argument under the sun with him. If you want to argue with me about it or you want to have a debate, you let me know. I'm well versed. I don't think it's an evil thing. It scares me that it's been altered over time. That scares me. If you want to have a debate about it, let me know. They're saying that there's a downward trend in the use. This only goes up to 2014 though, so it's very old. I should probably look up a newer one. If anybody wants to do that, look up the newer trends in marijuana use. Feel free to email it to me and I'll share it with the group. So why do adolescents use drugs? For one, it's a pleasurable experience. Again, remember that frontal lobe is not changing a whole lot during this adolescent time period, and it's really kind of a live for the moment kind of a situation. So it's pleasurable. It's an escape. If the student is under stress, it's a good way to escape. Peer pressure. We believe it enhances academic performance. I've not ever seen that happen, by the way, but that's a belief. So here I want to tell you, my oldest son is an addict. He started using marijuana right out of high school. He quickly turned to alcohol, and then he turned to drugs. He had been a drug addict for 4 or 5 years. He sold, he committed crimes. He went to rehab and has come back clean, and a dedicated person to the area of addiction. So I'm going to give you some of his statements and some of his feedback too. Yes, I'm stinking proud of him. So the facets of addiction, there's two parts to addiction. There's the psychological addiction, which is what I said, marijuana tends to be more of a psychological addiction. But then there's a biological addiction to most other drugs. The psychological addiction is depending on the drug to cope with everyday stress. It allows the user to escape. They don't have to problem solve. They don't have to deal with the situations that are causing the stress. It allows them to escape that. For my son, that's exactly what it was. He also, again, he's ADHD, and he started off doing drugs because he felt they helped him to relax. They helped him to focus, which that is not true. And they helped him to sleep. That was his main reason for starting. But he liked the feeling, which led to the biological addiction. Your body becomes so used to this chemical that when it's not there anymore, it creates major issues. Your body becomes ill, incredibly ill. And then you have to take the drug to feel good. Not to feel great, just to feel good. And each time you take the drug, you build a tolerance, which means you need more and more and more. For my internship, I worked at the drug and alcohol court, and I saw this all the time. People who psychologically had gotten off their drug, psychologically wanted the best for themselves. They wanted to go forward and do great things. Biologically, it grabbed them. Binge drinking among college students. So binge drinking is drinking a whole lot at one time. So it says for men, 49% in a college, not at Roberts though, I'm sure, are binge drinkers, whereas 41% are binge drinkers for women. 20% non-drinkers for men, 19% for women. 31% who they drink, but they don't binge drink. 40% of women who drink but don't binge drink. This would be going to a big party and getting rip-roaring drunk on a regular basis. Not good for you. Terribly not good for you. Why do adolescents start to drink? It can be genetic. In my family, alcoholism is an issue on both sides. I did talk with my children about this genetic link, and my son thought he could handle it. He thought he would be able to win. But genetics was stronger, and he did not win that. He fought it, but he didn't win the beginning round. Sometimes it's a way of proving themselves to others. Sometimes it's just a way to release tension, reduce stress. And I don't remember what the false consensus effect is. From activity or from use to addiction. Alcohol can become an uncontrollable habit. Again, we said if you start out with, I just need a glass of beer, all right, now I need 2, I need 3, it increases because you become more tolerant. And if you don't drink, you have this craving. So now we're talking about smoking cigarettes. Why do adolescents smoke and maintain the habit? Advertisement and media, I think that's decreased in the last year or so. But prior to that, every movie had a smoking person in it, if not everybody. Commercials had young people. Once you start, it's an addiction. It's the same as any drug. It's tobacco, but it's an addiction. Sometimes it's a parent or peer that leads you into it or shows you it. I know my mother was a smoker. My father was not a smoker. So my role model was my father, because I remember many car rides where my mother would roll down the window and smoke in the car. and I would either choke or freeze. So didn't want to. It's also considered an adolescent rite of passage, and I'm hearing that children as young as 10 are getting their hands on cigarettes and smoking, probably even younger at this point. It's much easier to get a hold of. It's much easier to take from somebody. So I wouldn't even begin to say adolescent. I would even say childhood. This is an issue. Sexually transmitted infections definitely has an impact on your health. AIDS is a leading cause of death among young people. Over 25 million people have died from AIDS. Again, this is an older, updated in 2017. I'm sure it's a little more than that now. Then there are just some other sexually transmitted diseases. And which ones have the most impact. HPV is the new one. Well, it's not new. It's newly discovered, maybe. So you can see that's a huge number. This one, I mean, HIV is way down here. This one is an issue because HPV can lead to cancer, especially in women. So there's a huge push for education and dealing with that at this time. And on that friendly note, we're done with this chapter. I will post questions for both sections. Thanks.